Good evening, I'm Cynthia Ng and you are tuning in to AWANI Tonight. Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim chaired his first Pakatan Harapan Presidential Council meeting today since his appointment as Prime Minister. Asked on when he will announce the cabinet lineup, Anwar said that this will be done as soon as possible after hearing all views.
Sesegera mungkin. No, because seperti mana saya sebut, tidak seperti mana biasa. Kerajaan perpaduan ini melibatkan banyak parti. Jadi saya sebelum buat keputusan, saya mesti dengar semua pandangan. Dan kemudian masalahnya kerana jumlah kabinet itu diperkecilkan. Kalau dulu dia masuk je lah 50, K 60, K 70, K tak cukup lagi. Duta khas, tak cukup lagi. Penasihat khas. Saya tak sanggup buat begitu.
The Coalition for Free and Fair Elections, BERSE, has strongly objected to the appointment of any lawmakers with ongoing criminal cases to cabinet positions. In a statement today, the organisation raised its concern with suggestions by certain parties to push for UMNO President Datuk Sri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi, who is facing corruption charges, to be given the post of Deputy Prime Minister. BERSE also reiterated that such political maneuvers could cast doubts on the integrity of Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim's government and tarnish the reputation of the country. Zahid is still facing trial for 47 criminal breaches of trust charges involving funds from Yayasan Akal Budi. BERSE also urged all parties in the coalition government to refrain from putting forth individuals with ongoing court cases for Anwar's consideration as he forms his cabinet. This includes DAP National Chairman Lim Guan Eng, Muda President Syed Saddiq Syed Abdul Rahman, and UMNO Sabah Chief Datuk Sri Bong Mokhtar Radin until after their cases have been fully disposed of by the courts without any interference from the executive through the Attorney General chambers. BERSE also urged the government to temporarily transfer the role of prosecutor from the Attorney General to the Solicitor General to ensure neutrality in all ongoing cases involving politicians. BERSE said this was important to prevent the handling of these cases from being used as bargaining chips when forming the cabinet under the new coalition government. It proposed this as a stopgap measure until the Attorney General chambers is reformed and the power to prosecute is separated from the AG and transferred to an independent public prosecution office. July State Assemblyman Datuk Sri Wan Rosdi Wan Ismail was sworn in as the Pahang Menteri Besar for his second term today. The Regent of Pahang consented to a government comprising Barisan Nasional and Pakatan Harapan after no coalition obtained a simple majority to form a state government on its own in the 15th general elections. Wan Rosdi, who is also the Pahang Barisan Nasional chairman, was first selected to helm the state administration in 2018. He retained the July state seat in GE15 to serve his fifth term with a majority of 6,983 votes. There are a total of 42 seats in the Pahang State Assembly, but voting for the Tioman seat was postponed following the death of the Perikatan Nasional candidate Mat Yunus Ramli on polling day. Perikatan Nasional had won 17 seats in the election, followed by Barisan Nasional with 16 and Pakatan Harapan with 8. The ringgit surged by 1.8% last Thursday after Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim was appointed as Prime Minister, the largest single-day gain since March 2016. Can this upward trend continue this week? Economist Carmelo Ferlito shares his thoughts.
So after the initial euphoria, maybe there will be still some positive signal and then a stabilization. Although I think that the real test will be, actually we will have a few more tests. One will be the appointments in the cabinet and see how the markets react to the names that are going to occupy crucial positions like the Ministry of Finance or the Minister of International Trade. So this, I think, will be two key appointments that we need to monitor. And this is the first fact. The second is that we are going to have a unity government. I do believe that life is not going to be easy for a unity government. It is a good fact to have it rather than being without it. but we will have different souls living together, and how long they can stay together without too much fighting, this is something that we have to see.
Carmelo adds that the Prime Minister's next steps for the economy is to present a concrete policy agenda that must be clear on implementation, along with better interministerial coordination.
I think that we should create a sort of control room between different ministries that have to do with the economy. So Minister of Finance, Minister of Human Resources, Minister of International Trade. I think we should look at a higher degree of coordination between these ministries so that what is decided in one place is agreed also in other places, and we can have a more holistic approach to restoring Malaysia competitiveness for the long run. What I'm scared is on one side that Anwar is seen as the providence man that can, because he has been waiting for so long and many people have been waiting for him for so long, that then the expectations that are put on this man are excessive for him and for the people. No man will have healing powers. He's just a man, like Zahid, like Ismail Sabri, like everybody else. He is just a man. That's why we need a more coordinated effort, very much humility in policy making.
One of the first things on the 10th Prime Minister's agenda is to review the government subsidy program with aims to direct more support toward low-income groups. Carmelo gives his views on how this should be carried out.
So there has been a lot of talking about rationalization of subsidies and targeted subsidies, and it is indeed the moment to go into the action. How do I see it? I think that government should provide those goods and services that are currently provided at subsidized price at market price, and then issue support, financial support to certain income brackets. And the amount of the support should be different according to different income brackets. And I rather advocate for vouchers, purpose vouchers rather than cash hands out, because this, I believe, can create also a market for these vouchers. And I make an example. Let's say I belong to the B40 and I have to pay the public transportation at market price, but then the government give me a voucher for the public transportation. But for whatever reason, I don't need that voucher because I live next to the workplace or I work from home, then I can sell my voucher to someone that is more in the need for that voucher, because maybe the allocated voucher is not enough for that. So this, I think, will create a vibrant bottom-up answer to the needs on the ground, because the government obviously can act only on the basis of an average. So a certain income bracket will receive a certain support, but that support on the ground, the needed support is different person by person. And then we can allow a spontaneous market to emerge for that support to be even more targeted.
Expectations are high for Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim's incoming administration to continue the reform agenda started in 2018. Tonight on Consider This, we speak to activists about their expectations for the pace and scope of reform. We'll take a short break. Stay tuned for more.
Perjuangan untuk Piala Dunia bermula. Saksikan kesemua 64 perlawanan secara langsung dalam 4K HDR dan on the go. Segalanya di sini. Piala Dunia FIFA Qatar 2022. Hanya di Astro.
Terus saksikan perlawanan langsung bola sepak dengan rangkaian menyeluruh. Stream di mana jua dengan pas percuma siaran langsung sekarang.
Police in China have been detaining people as protests against the country's strict COVID-19 measures spread to some of its biggest cities in a rare outpouring of public defiance. Apart from Shanghai and Beijing, demonstrations have also been seen in Nanjing, Chengdu, Wuhan and other places, including at universities. People have been criticizing not only COVID restrictions but also President Xi Jinping, with some calling for him to resign. Chinese protesters have turned to blank sheets of paper to express their anger over COVID-19 restrictions, a tactic used in part to evade censorship or arrest. They are angry at Xi's prolonged zero-COVID approach, which involves mass testing, quarantines and snap lockdowns. A deadly fire in Urumqi on the western Xinjiang region that has been under COVID restrictions since August was the trigger for the protests over the weekend. Although state media has insisted people in the block of flats where the fire broke out were able to leave their apartments, many people believe COVID measures may have contributed to the deaths of 10 people. But anger at the consequences of zero COVID had already been building for many months, following other deaths and incidences of suffering that people say could have been avoided. The Chinese government has not acknowledged the protests or responded in any formal way. However, news of the protests is spreading through Chinese social media despite heavy censorship. On Monday, China recorded over 40,000 new COVID-19 cases, a fifth straight daily record. The latest protests in China had challenged the central authorities, unlike the demonstrations in recent decades that mainly targeted local officials. But they were still far from the protests leading up to the Tiananmen crackdown in 1989, when activists could leverage the divided leadership within China's Communist Party to press their demand.
It is very different, still very different from 1989, because in 1989, when students are protesting, that there's clear sign that the party leadership is divided, and people are exploiting this division within the party leader to press the demand. This time, we don't see any sign of division in the party leaderships, and Xi still seem to be in absolute control. We don't see any sign that some other party leaders are trying to take advantage of this to challenge Xi. Without the clear signal of party leaders, the divisions, and I would expect this kind of protest might not last very long. For now, that definitely the government will resort to this kind of harsh crackdown and measures, and it is unimaginable that they will try to resolve the issue by backing down, changing the policy. It is not the Xi Jinping style, and it is not going to do any good for them anyway.
Australia lowered its terrorism threat level to possible from probable for the first time in 8 years, citing a reduced risk of attacks from extremists. This is the first change in the level since 2014, which was then spurred by concerns over the number of Australians believed to be fighting overseas with the Islamic State militant group. According to Australian Security Intelligence Organisation Director General Mike Bridges, the defeat of the Islamic State group in the Middle East and an ineffective Al-Qaeda propaganda failing to connect with Western youth has resulted in fewer extremists in Australia. Bridges, however, noted the change did not mean all terror threats had been extinguished.
This does not mean the threat is extinguished. Far from it. Possible does not mean negligible. It remains plausible that someone will die at the hands of a terrorist in Australia within the next 12 months. Although, of course, my organisation will literally work around the clock to prevent that from happening.
And that is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Thank you for watching. My name is Cynthia Ng. Good night.